Masechet Yevamot Daf Kof Zayin. We begin the 13th perek, which is all about mi'un, meaning refusal of a minor. The halacha is that a father can marry off his minor daughter. It might be beneficial in many cases to marry her off early. And if a father does it, then that has biblical significance, it's a biblical marriage. However, if the father dies, then the rabbis instituted that the mother or an adult brother can also marry off the minor girl, although this would only have the force of a dirabanan. The reason why the rabbis did this is because a minor girl without a father to protect her may be subject to guys coming and mistreating her. And so therefore, if they would betroth her as a minor to a man, then that man will protect her and then hopefully continue the marriage, and then they'll live happily ever after. However, if the girl refuses, since she may not have had full knowledge of who she's marrying or enough maturity to accept it, as long as she is a minor, she can refuse. That's called mi'un, and say, I don't want to be married to him, and then retroactively that marriage is null and void, and then she can go ahead and marry anyone she wants when she grows up. Okay, so we have four mahloket between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel, four different issues. Mishnah: Bet Shammai omrim en mema'anin ela arusot, uBet Hillel omrim arusot venesuot. Bet Shammai is going to be limiting the application of a possibility of mi'un in all four of the following cases. And the first one is that Bet Shammai says mi'un only works after erusin. If this man does kiddushin only with the minor, gives her a ring, and then they did not do any nisuin yet, then as long as that is true, she can do mi'un. However, once they do nisuin in some way, the Gemara is going to talk about three different ways of doing nisuin, we'll see. Then that's it. Then she can no longer do mi'un. The Gemara is going to bring four different explanations for Bet Shammai's reason here. Bet Hillel omrim arusot unsuot. Bet Hillel says no, she can do mi'un even after nisuin, even after the final stage of marriage, also that she can still get out of it and refuse her husband. Second issue, we'll see also why Bet Hillel, according to each of those four reasons of Bet Shammai, why Bet Hillel disagrees. Bet Shammai omrim be'ba'al ve'lo be'yavam, u'Bet Hillel omrim be'ba'al u'be'yavam. Bet Shammai says that a girl can refuse her husband, but she cannot refuse her yabam if, as a minor, her husband dies without children, and then she will have a connection to his brother, the yavam. If she doesn't like the yavam, doesn't want to be with him, doesn't want to do yibum, she can refuse him. Sorry, she cannot, according to Bet Shammai, she cannot refuse him. She can't go and say, oh, I never wanted to be married to the husband. No, as long as the husband is alive, she can do mi'un. Once the husband dies, then that's it. She loses her chance to do mi'un, and she has a zikah with the yavam, and then she would have to do some kind of chalitza or yibum as she grows up. Bet Hillel, however, says she still has this right of refusal even after her husband dies, and she could tell the Yavam, sorry, I don't want to be your Yevama, and she can therefore annul the marriage even after the husband has died. Third issue, Bet Shammai omrim befanav, uBet Hillel omrim befanav v'shelo befanav. Bet Shammai says that the girl can refuse her husband only in his presence. He has to be there. Maybe give him a chance to speak to her, change her mind. Sorry, I yelled at you. Don't refuse. I'll give you a house. I don't know. So she has to be in front of her. Bet Hillel says no. Maybe she'll be embarrassed to do it in front of him. She can do it. She has to do it in front of people. We'll see in a second, but the husband can be absent, and she can still make that declaration of refusal. And the fourth issue, Bet Shammai omrim bebet din, uBet Hillel omrim bebet din v'shelo bebet din. Bet Shammai says she has to go to court. in order to make this refusal. It has to be an official declaration in front of a court. It'll be publicized, and they have it on the record there, and that will allow it to go and get married. Bet Hillel says, no, we don't want to make things too difficult for her to find a Bet Din. Maybe there's no Bet Din nearby. Maybe it's imposing to go to Bet Din. But rather, she can just gather some people together and say in front of them, even if it's not in an official court. אמרו להם בית הלל בית שמאי ממאנת וכתנה אפילו 4 פעמים. And one more issue, בית הלל says to בית שמאי, a girl can refuse while she's a minor, and she can do so 4 or 5 times. So she's married off, and then she refuses, and then she's married off again, and she can refuse, and this can happen many times until they find someone that she actually likes. אמרו להם בית שמאי, אין בנות ישראל הפקר, אלא ממאנת וממתנת עד שתגדיל ותמאן ותינשא. בית שמאי says this is not respectful. We should not treat the daughters of Israel as something free that so lightly, something like everyone takes part in it, like something that's ownerless, right? It looks like it's ownerless. She's being passed off from one guy to the other. So rather, she can do it one time. And if she doesn't like that guy, then she refuses him, and she'll wait until she becomes an adult. And as an adult, it looks like she has to do mi'un again as an adult. We'll see why. And then she can get married properly as an adult to the person. So this is more respectful, even though it is, in fact, a restriction. Okay, so those are all the differences between Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai. And now we're going to have 4 explanations for the opinion of Bet Shammai regarding the first option, the first mahloket, that only if she was an arusa, to the minor to the man, then she can refuse. But if they already did full nisu'in, then she can no longer refuse. Why? אמר רב יהודה אמר שמואל מה תמה דבית שמאי לפי שאין תנאי בנישואין ואם נשואה תמאן התלם אמר יש תנאי בנישואין. Shmuel explains that we have a principle that there's you can't make a conditional marriage. I'll use marriage and betrothal to talk about nisu'in and kiddushin. Now, everyone agrees that you can have a concept of condition regarding kiddushin. You can say, listen, you'll be mikudesha to me, accept this ring, on condition that you go to the gym. So then if she goes to the gym, then the kiddushin is valid. If she never goes to the gym, then the kiddushin is not valid. So you can do such a thing. But and tenai bin nisu'in, if they do a full marriage ceremony, you could do a marriage ceremony in 3 ways. One is by consummating with bi'ah. A second way is the wedding canopy or the home that is owned by the groom, or it could be a hotel room that he rents. So when he brings her into his canopy, it would be the second way. And the third way would be through a messenger like Eliezer or Eved Avraham goes and he takes Rivka. So when the Rivka's family passes her to Eved Avraham, so that is itself kind of like nisu'in, so another type of transfer from her family to his family, even though it's through an agent. Okay, so we have a principle that you can't make a condition. You can't do nisu'in on condition. So you'll be entering this canopy on condition that you go to the gym. No, that's an act, and that's a final act. And furthermore, even if you made a condition during kiddushin, so when you gave the ring and did kiddushin, so he says on condition that you go to the gym. But if in the end they go and consummate the marriage, let's say with bi'ah, then that shows that he doesn't really care about the condition. The fact that the man is willing to go to the next step and consummate the marriage, that means he's fully in and he forgives that condition. He says, okay, don't worry about the gym, I don't really care about it. Even if he doesn't say it, the act of bi'ah with nisu'in through bi'ah shows that he does not care about the condition, and therefore any condition is invalid. that he made, and the kiddushin sticks, and the nisuin sticks. So that's a general principle that Shemuel, according to that Bet Shammai holds according to Shemuel. There's no tenai b'nisuin. Now here's the problem: this minor girl, she's not making a condition; she is refusing the marriage. So that's not a condition; that's retroactively annulling it. But here's the issue: if we allow a minor who has nisuin to refuse and undo her marriage, people will look at that and say, "Oh, look, someone who did kiddushin and nisuin can undo her marriage. That looks very much like a conditional marriage." I'm not going to make a clear distinction between a minor marriage and an adult who makes a condition, and they'll come to say, if this girl can get out of her marriage by refusal, so too an adult who makes a condition on her marriage or on the kiddushin, and then they do marriage, then that condition works, and you can undo the marriage if the condition is not met, and that's not true because en tenai b'nisuin. So that's according to Shemuel. It's kind of a gezerah of what people might come to make a mistake. All right, fine. That works, we say, if they do nisuin through bi'ah. But nichnesa lechupa velo niba'ala ma'ika lememar. What if they don't do the nisuin through bi'ah, but rather through a wedding canopy? Nowadays, we do we don't do the transfer with an agent. But that would be more like if they live far away, they could do that. But nowadays, we do it in a number of ways, so including the canopy. So let's say they did through a canopy and they did not have bi'ah, then ma'ika lememar, because in that case, in the parallel for nisuin, if a man made a condition with an adult woman and said, this kiddushin is al tenai that you go to the gym, and then they do a chuppah, nisuin with chuppah, that doesn't necessarily show that he forgave the condition, because they didn't do bi'ah that would show the highest level of, yes, he's absolutely committed, taking her in. But this is chuppah, where you could say, okay, so the chuppah would be nothing. And so you might think that you should not make such a gezerah in that case. No, we see lefisha and tenai bechuppah, even for a canopy, where the canopy will undo any condition that was there before. Even the canopy shows great love that he has and shows that he's totally committed to taking her in as a full wife, and therefore we can assume that he forgave the condition that was made before. So it applies there too. Okay, fine. Now, Masara av l'shluchei Baal, if her father transferred her to agents of the husband. Now, he's not even around. That's not it's not a very romantic scene. It doesn't really show any personal commitment on his part that someone looking would say, "Oh, look, he must have forgiven this condition. He's sitting at home and he sent the messengers." So what are you going to say about that case? And we answer, "Lo pelug rabbanan." Once the rabbis make a gezerah, they're going to make it a gezerah in all cases, even though the logic doesn't really apply in the case of delivery to agents. So basically, according to Shemuel, the reason why we do Bet Shammai does not allow mi'un for a minor who got married, who did nisuin, is that really you could do it. The whole thing is d'Rabbanan anyway. So really you could, but it kind of looks like a tenai in the nisuin. If you could undo a marriage with mi'un, people will come to make a mistake and say you can undo a marriage through nisuin. And while it's true, you could do such a thing with a marriage through transferring to shluchei Baal, that the other cases with bi'ah or with chuppah are problematic, because that shows a person, the man, doesn't care about the condition, and so therefore, in order not to make any confusion, we prohibit all of them. All right, so that's reason number one. Now, how about Bet Hillel? How come he doesn't agree with that reason? Bet Hillel medayat ed nisuei ketana d'Rabbanan. According to Bet Hillel, everybody knows that a minor is different from an adult. A minor can do mi'un, right? And it's until she is an adult, the marriage will always be dependent on the minor accepting it and not refusing. So everybody knows the difference, and therefore they're not going to come to confuse a minor undoing nisuin with an adult who has a condition doing nisuin. Okay. Rabba v'Rav Yosef tamre tarvayhu. Second explanation of Bet Shammai. Tama de Bet Shammai lefi she'en adam oseh bi'ilato be'ilat zinut. The reason is because a person will not want his bi'ah to be rendered a promiscuous act. In other words, upstanding men care about their reputation and what other people think of them and what they think of themselves. And so therefore, if they enter into a marriage and consummate it with bi'ah, then they want to know that the marriage is going to continue so that they can continue feeling that they did the right thing. If they would do nisu'in and then she always has a right to refusal, well, when she refuses after the nisu'in, then it turns out retroactively they weren't married, and then all those times that they might have had bi'ah would be considered promiscuous, and people will look at the guy and says, oh, look at this, he has promiscuous relations with a minor, what a lowlife. And so most men would not want to have that burden upon themselves, and therefore they would not marry the minors in the first place. Now that isn't good because then we're not helping out the minors. We said the whole reason why the rabbis instituted marriage for a minor, even when the father dies, is to help out the minor so that she'll have a protector and she won't be abused by other men. He will take care of her. So we want that to happen, but we don't want the men to say, I'm not going to get into this because she might refuse, and then my reputation will be sullied, and it turns out my bi'ot will be zenut, and I don't want to have that, so they might not do the marriage at all. So therefore, according to Bet Shammai, we say, listen, as long as you only did kiddushin, so there's no bi'ah, so then there's no problem. The men will be willing to do that, even though it's possible that the girl might do mi'un. But once they consummate the marriage with bi'ah, then she no longer has the right to get out, and that way the men won't have to worry that their bi'ot will be licentious bi'ot. Okay, so that's the reason. Now, fine, that makes sense as bi'ah because person does not want his bi'ot to be considered promiscuous. What if they only did a canopy? That also affects nisu'in, so they could be nisu'in, but you don't have to worry about the bi'ot. And the answer to that is also, lo nichale de teheveh chuppah de isura. Yeah, a man would not want the canopy to be forbidden, one of act that's forbidden. Notice the canopy itself is a kind of symbolic bringing the woman into her home. It sets up the stage for the consummation of the marriage. So even that doesn't look right, doesn't feel right to the guy, and he's going to be upset if he would do a canopy and then she would refuse. He would feel like this was not fitting for his reputation, and therefore he may not do kiddushin with the minor in the first place, and then she will not be protected. So therefore, even in this case, the rabbi said, you know what, she can refuse kiddushin, but once you do even a chuppah, she cannot refuse anymore. Now, okay, fine. Now, what if it's just the transferring from the father of the bride to the agents of the husband? In that case, he's not even around, and nothing happened. So she refuses. Okay, so then transfer her back. And the answer, lo pilug rabbanan. Once the rabbis say not to do it, so they say not to do it, even though the reasoning doesn't apply in this case. It does apply in the other two, and therefore any way that one does nisu'in, she can no longer refuse after. Bet Hillel, according to this reasoning, how come Bet Hillel doesn't care about this consideration? He says, since he did everything properly with kiddushin and a ketubah, so right, everybody was there, the witnesses, he did proper kiddushin and he gave her a ketubah, so people aren't going to say, oh, look at this promiscuous guy, he has bi'ah with people outside of marriage, because you did kiddushin. It's not like they just went and and hid somewhere. Everything was legitimate at that time. So therefore, he went through the regular kiddushin process, even if he consummated with bi'ah. so even if afterwards she refuses and it turns out, okay, retroactively they weren't married, but at the time that he was with her with Bia, it was proper, and therefore there's no problem of his reputation or of his own self-standing. All right, that's the second explanation. Now, Rav Papa gives a third one. Amar Tama de Bet Shammai mishum pere, Tama de Bet Hillel mishum pere. He has the same explanation for both Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel. How can you have the one explanation for two opposite things? Well, this is because of the fruits. If she brings in land that into the marriage that belongs to her, and she will take them out once they're finished. Once the marriage is over. But while they're married, he can enjoy the fruits, or anything, if it's a factory or whatever it is, that he gets the profits while they're married. So that would be a reason for both Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel to either prohibit or permit doing mi'un after marriage. So Tama de Bet Shammai mishum pere di'amat nisu'at tema'en Shamet v'achel lehu mina to sof sof lemepa kayama. The reason of Bet Shammai is to not allow a girl to do mi'un if they did nisu'in is because once you do nisu'in, then he can start enjoying the fruits of the land. And if you say that there's always a possibility that even after nisu'in, the girl can refuse, and now he gets the land goes back to her, so he's not going to want to invest anything in the land. In a normal marriage, where you assume that the marriage will continue for a long time, so now he's going to take care of the land and he's going to invest in it and plow it and take from the fruits only so much that it will continue to grow well. So then it's a good deal for both sides. But if he says, any minute, look at this girl, very fickle, and maybe next year she's going to take the land back, you know what? I'm going to take as much fruit as I can, even if it's going to damage the land. So he's going to take it from it, and because in the end, it's going to go back to her. So this is not good for her. All right. Bet Hillel adrabah. They say the opposite. Kevan de'amart tema'en ashpuche mishabach lehu sabadi lo aise la kirobeha umapeki la mine. Bet Hillel knows the opposite because he has in mind. He has in his mind. He knows that at any moment she can refuse. Now we assume that he got into this because he likes this girl and so wants to remain married to her and for a long time. So since this is still conditional, she can get it any time, so he's going to put in a lot of effort to make the land improved as much as possible. Because he says, if I don't do that, if I would just plunder the land and not take care of it, then her relatives are going to tell her, look what a lowlife this guy is. Look how he treats your property. You better refuse him. So therefore, the possibility of her refusal after marriage is actually going to encourage him to treat the land better, and therefore it's actually a good idea to allow her to refuse after even after nisu'in. Okay, this is really a fascinating mahloket because it gets into a very fundamental issue, which is if we want to strengthen the institution of marriage, can you strengthen it better by making it more difficult for a girl or a woman to get out of it? If it's very difficult to get out of it, then there'll be less divorces because they can't get out of it. Or Bet Hillel would say, no, the opposite. If a girl can get out of it, then the husband is going to have to work extra hard to make her happy. And then they'll have happier and stronger marriages, and that will lead to less separation, less divorce. Okay, so very, very fundamental philosophies here. And lastly, Rava Amar Hainu Ta'amad de Bet Shammai She'en Adam Torech Bis'uda Umafsida. Rava says it's because of the wedding celebration, which costs a lot of money to invite all the guests and pay for all the food. And so according to Bet Shammai, you know what? If a girl can always refuse afterwards, then you know what's going to happen? He's not going to make an expensive wedding, because I'm not going to bother paying. In those days, the groom would pay for the wedding. I'm not going to bother paying for a big wedding, and then look, I'm going to lose out on it, because she's just going to refuse, and then the poor bride, she won't have a nice wedding. So therefore, we say, you know what? If you do the wedding and you do nisuin, don't worry. Then she's not allowed to refuse anymore, and then they'll have a proper wedding ceremony. Okay, Bet Hillel, Tarvayu nicha lehu kedei lepuk alayu kala deishut. And Bet Hillel says, no, you don't have to worry about that, because having a really nice wedding is good for both of them. The man wants a nice wedding. He's not only doing it for her, and she wants a nice wedding. Everybody wants a nice big wedding. Invite a lot of people, because you want to have publicity about it. That's actually one of the main effects of the marriage, is that it becomes publicly known. Everybody says, "Oh, remember that wedding? Remember it for a long time after." And then that publicizes the fact that they are now married. And so people don't want to do just a small wedding in the rabbi's office, and no one even knows about it. They see them. Oh, were they married? What's going on there? So therefore, don't worry. Even if there is a possibility that she can refuse, nevertheless, he'll still make a big wedding. This similar idea to before, where opposite, the fact that she can refuse will make sure that the husband will make a really nice wedding, so she'll be happy and treat her nicely throughout all those years, at least until she becomes an adult, and hopefully afterwards as well. We now analyze the second mahloket in the Mishnah, where Bet Shammai says that refusal of a minor works only against her husband, but will not work if the husband dies without children to the Yavam. You can't do any refusal with the Yavam. However, Bet Hillel says, no, it works with the Yavam also. And we're going to try to figure out, well, how exactly does that work, right? We understand how she could do mi'un with her husband, but the Yavam is a different story altogether. So in what cases will it work, in what cases will it not? We'll see two main opinions now, and then we're going to move to the possibility when there's multiple brothers, and we'll see about three opinions in that case. Amarav Oshaya, mema'enet lema'amaro, ve'ena mema'enet lezikato. If she's a minor, she's married to a man, and he dies without children, so now she has a zikah with the brother. Now, that zikah, she cannot refuse that zikah. That came upon her by itself, and she can't go and retroactively undo her original marriage, at least not according to the Rabbi Yoshaya. Rabbi Ula will say that. So rather, what does it mean? It means that if the Yavam would do a ma'amad, that's like kiddushin, but for yibum. It's not actually necessary, but the rabbi said it's a nice idea not to just do bi'ah for to the Yevamah, but to make it more like a regular marriage. So give her a ring, and this is called ma'amad. In order to get out of ma'amad, you would normally need a get. So the Yoshaya says this is what Bet Hillel means, that she can do mi'un, refuse the ma'amad, and then the ma'amad is undone. She will still need chalitza in order to undo the zikah. She cannot simply get out of the zikah through a refusal. Amar Rav Chisda, so Rabbi Yeshua here is explaining Bet Hillel, or limiting Bet Hillel. Amar Rav Chisda, my tamad Rabbi Oshaya. What's the reason? Ma'amar de mida'ata masya akra, zikah de bal korcha lo masya akra. Regarding ma'amad, that's with her knowledge. When the Yavam comes and says, right, you had mikudeshet, or you will be my Yevamah, I'm going to do bi'ah with you through this ring, she has to accept it. If she says no, then it doesn't work. So since she willingly enters into it, so too she can refuse it afterwards as a minor. That's her right. Whereas the zikah, that happened by itself. The husband died without children. Nobody, she didn't ask for that to happen. Doesn't matter if she agrees to it or not. That is just a state of being, that now that her husband dies, she has a bond with the Yavam. So since it did not come upon her consensually, she cannot refuse it by her will. It has nothing to do, it's not based on her will, she cannot refuse it. Makes sense. Okay, but now, v'harei bi'ah de ba'al korcha matzya akra. Hold on, we have a very interesting thing that, according to Rabbi Yeshaya, is kind of a paradox. While it's true that she cannot refuse the zikah, But let's say the Yavam performs Yibum. They have Bi'ah, and now they're fully married. Now that they're fully married, she's still a minor, so she can refuse him as a husband. Remember, according to Bet Hillel, she can do refusal more than once, right? Even 4 or 5 times as a minor. So this, in effect, is simply a second husband. Happens to be they didn't go through Kiddushin and Nisu'in like a normal wedding, but rather through Yibum. But now that she is with this Yavam, married to him, she can refuse it. Now, remember that Bi'ah of Yibum can be done against her will. If the Yavam, even if he forces himself upon the Yavama, it's not a very nice thing to do, but the Yibum is effective. And so here, that logic wouldn't work because we just said she can only refuse something that she consensually agrees to. She does not consent and have to consensually agree to Yibum. So how could you say that there she can refuse it? Ela bi'a u'ma'amarhut ka'abed matzya akra zika derachamana rama'ala la matzya akra. Rather, we're going to explain it a little differently. Regarding bi'ah and ma'amad, the man is the one that initiates. He does an action. He either does bi'ah with her, and therefore they're fully married as yibum, or he does ma'amad, and then that's a kind of kiddushin leading up to yibum. Since he initiates, she can say, oh, no, I don't want it. Right? That's the normal case. Just like every marriage, he initiates, and she can refuse as a minor. But Sikah, he didn't do anything. That just happened from heaven. That was the luck of the dice that the husband died without children, and now all of a sudden this bond was created because of the halacha that Hashem wrote in the Torah, so that she cannot refuse something that is bound to her simply by the law. Okay, so all that is Rabbi Oshaya, who very much limits the application of Bet Hillel's ruling. Ula amar mema'enet af lezikato, my ta'ama nisu'e kama'e ka'akra. Ula says a stronger reading when Bet Hillel says that she can refuse the yavam. That means that her refusal even undoes the marriage, the bond, the zikah with the yavam. How does that work? He says it works retroactively, that she can say, even after the husband's dead, I never wanted to be married to him in the first place. Wait, you were happy the whole time until he died. Okay, well, now I changed my mind. Look, I have to be with this Yavam. Forget it. I never wanted to be married in the first place. She was never married, and therefore the husband who died without children is no longer her husband, and she has no Yibum obligation to him. So a really fascinating kind of time travel paradox here. All right. Iti beh rava le'ula. Kol she'yechola lema'en ve'lo me'ana. Sarata choleset ve'lo mityabemet. Ve'amai. So Rava is going to challenge Ula based on this retroactive time paradox. Based on the following Barita that says a woman that can do mi'un, meaning a girl, and she doesn't do mi'un, and let's say we're going to combine that with a case from the first Mishnah of the whole Yevamot, let's say like Sarat Tabat. So let's say we have a case like this where an uncle is married to his niece and she is a minor. So she could do Yibum at any point. The uncle is also married to another woman who's not related. He dies without children. So now, let's say there's just one brother who is also the father of that, the father of one of the co-wives. So if she would have done mi'un before her husband died, well then the father could have done yibum with the other wife, because at the time that he died there was no connection. He was not related to any of the wives because she refused him. However, what if she didn't do mi'un back then? So then the ruling here is that he has to do chalitza and cannot do yibum with that co-wife. Now we ask why. Ve'amai tema'en hashta v'takrinu l'nisu'e kama'eh v'tijabem sarata. If, according to what you said here, Ula, she can do mi'un anytime, even after the husband died, so let her do mi'un now after the husband died, and then retroactively she will never have been married to her uncle, and therefore the father of this girl can do yibum with the other wife because his daughter retroactively was never related was never married. Okay, so really interesting question. So we answer, no, sarat arva shane detane rami bad yechezkel me'ana be'baal muteret le'aviv be'yavam asura le'aviv. No, regarding one of those 15 relations that are arayot, the situation is different. How do we know the situation is different? Because Rami bar Yechezkel has a Barita that teaches if a woman refuses her husband, as a minor girl who goes ahead and refuses her husband, and afterwards she decides she wants to marry the father of that guy. That's permitted because she retroactively undid that marriage, so she was never married to him, so therefore she's permitted to the father. Beyavam asura le'aviv. However, if she does mi'un to a yavam, then she cannot marry the father. Since that yibum, that zikah connection was once there, that prohibits her forever also to the father. So what's the explanation of this? Alma bishat nefila nir'et kechalato, hachaname bishat nefila nir'et kesarat bito. The reason there is because we focus in on, we make a time slice, freeze the time right there. At the time that the husband dies, she is basically the daughter-in-law of that father. She is a daughter-in-law because of the deceased husband, and she has a zikah with another one of the brothers. That's going to be her father-in-law. So because at that moment she is in fact the daughter-in-law of this man, even if she does mi'un and refuses him afterwards, and even if you say, like Ula, that retroactively undoes her original marriage, nevertheless, we take that that time slice, and that time slice is, well, it looks very much like a daughter-in-law, and so therefore it's no good. And so then we'll apply the same thing in this case, where at the time that the husband dies, it seems like, this is what would be the uncle case that we gave. It seems like the Yavam's brother is married to the Yavam's daughter. At that time, it is true. So even if she does mi'un afterwards, doesn't matter. We worry about the time of death itself, when she would fall, and she did fall as a Yevamah, and even though you retroactively undid it, nevertheless, right at that time, it looks really bad, and so we cannot permit such a case. So that case is different. Arayot we treat in a different way, and so that is not a problem. All right, all that was with one brother, but does it get more complicated if there's more than one brother? Let's see. Amar Rav me'ana bazeh asura lazeh midi dehava ba'alat haget. Again, now continuing in Bet Hillel, and according to Ula, who says that yes, a minor Yevamah can refuse the Yavam, and then that's it. She can go and marry elsewhere. So what if there's more than one brother? So Rav says, yeah, if she refuses one of the brothers, then she's prohibited to do yibum with any of the other brothers. Similar to someone who receives a get, Yevamah, where the Yavam gives a get to her. Now, the get does not affect chalitza. She still has to get chalitza, but the get is effective enough that it breaks the bond, and she is prohibited now to any of the brothers because she did this kind of halfway separation with one of the brothers. Just as if one of the brothers does chalitza, she also cannot go ahead and do yibum with any of the brothers. A get does the same thing, and the mi'un does the same thing. Right? Balat get lav kevan de itasera. La lechad itasra lahu lechula hachaname lo shena. Right, woman, when the Yevamah receives a get, don't we say that since she becomes prohibited to one brother, she also becomes prohibited to all the brothers? Same thing here. Once she does mi'un, she then cannot do yibum with that brother, and she cannot do yibum with any of the brothers. Okay, Shmuel says, no, I disagree with you, Rav. If there's more than one brother, then, and one of them, she refuses one of them, she is still permitted to go ahead and do yibum with the others. And it's not the same as a get. Why not? Regarding a get, he is the one that gives her a get. So the Yavam, who has the power to do chalitza, and then she would be prohibited to all the brothers. So he has the power to give her a get, and also prohibit her to all the other brothers, at least on the Rabbanan level. But here, she is the one refusing him. What does she say? She says, I do not desire you, I do not want you. But that only refuses him, but it doesn't say anything about his brothers. She didn't say, I don't like any of your brothers and don't want them. So she does not have the power, by refusing one of the brothers, to break the zikah to all the brothers, and she doesn't. She never said that she refuses all the brothers, only one of them. So therefore, even though she did miyun with one, she is still permitted to do yibum with the others. Rav Aseh Amar, a third opinion. If she refuses one, she's permitted to be even with that Yavam, and certainly any of the brothers. Now, why would that be? Didn't she refuse him? And Bet Hillel says you can refuse someone. So lema could be Oshaya Sibira le Damar enam ema'enet lezikato. Maybe Rav Aseh agrees with Rabbi Oshaya. He's the one that said above. He was the first interpretation, who says even according to Bet Hillel, you cannot refuse a zikah. All right. According to Bet Hillel, you can refuse after marriage, but you cannot refuse after zikah. Rather, Rabbi Yoshaya said that she can refuse after mi'un. If he does that type of kiddushin, then she can refuse a ma'amad. She can refuse a ma'amad of the yavam to the yavama, which is like a kiddushin, and she can say, I refuse that. So only from now forwards, but she cannot refuse the zikah and retroactively refuse her first husband after he died. So therefore, Rav Aseh is consistent with Rabbi Oshaya, because since that refusal does nothing, it accomplishes zero, so therefore she is permitted to do yibum with any of the brothers, even the one that she refused. So we say, no, not necessarily. Rav Aseh is consistent even with Ola. And why is it that she can marry even that one? So, when Ula said that, according to Bet Hillel, she can refuse even the Yavam and then go free, that was only true if there was only one Yavam. So then that she refuses and undoes the original marriage. Yeah, that's fine. But if there are many brothers who can all potentially be the Yavam, then she cannot refuse half of a zikah. Each of the brothers, there's three brothers, each of the three brothers has their own zikah, own partial zikah, until one of them will step up and do yibum or chalitza, then that one will take charge. But in the meantime, she has a zikah to all of them. So if she refuses one, and there's only one brother, that's it. She undid the whole thing, and she can go free. But if there's more than one brother and she refuses one, well, then that's a partial refusal. Well, you can't break half of a levirate bond. You have to break all or nothing. And since she didn't break all of them, so she broke none of them, and therefore she can even go ahead and do yibum with that one. It's not effective when there are multiple brothers, only when there's one brother. Okay, and another opinion, ki ata rabin amar Rabbi Yochanan me'ana bazeh muteret la'achin. So when Rabin came, he reported from Rabbi Yochanan that if she refuses one, she is permitted to the other brothers, but not to that brother that she refused. Velo hodu lo, but they said, no, we don't agree with that. And this is they said we don't agree with it. Who is they? Man lo hodu lo, amar Abaye Rav. Rav is the one that said above that once she does mi'un with one, she's prohibited to all of the brothers if there are multiple brothers. So this can't be Rav. Rav would disagree with Rabbi Yochanan, who said she's permitted to the brothers. So it could be that Rav is the one that said, no, we don't agree with that. Or two other possibilities. Rava Amar Rabbi Oshaya, V'amdi la Rav Aseh. Or it could be Rav Oshaya. he said a refusal doesn't work for the zikah of a yavam at all, only for the ma'amad of a yavam, and therefore if she tries to refuse the zikah, it doesn't work at all, and she'd be permitted even to that brother. Rav Aseh also said she is permitted, if she refuses him, she's permitted even to the brother she refuses, and so that would be more permissive than Rabbi Yochanan, who says she's only permitted to the achin. So either Rav is too stringent, and Rabbi Yochanan and Rav Aseh are too lenient. So, but all three are candidates to disagree with the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. We now move on to the next mahloket in the Gemara, in the Mishnah, between Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai. Bet Shammai says that a minor who makes a refusal has to do so in the presence of the husband. Bet Hillel says no need for his presence there. It could just be in front of the judges. Tanya, Amru lahen Bet Hillel leBet Shammai, v'lo pishon hagamal. So Bet Hillel challenges Bet Shammai from a story about a man named Pishon, not Hagamal, he was not a camel, but rather a dagesh in the mem, shows that this is a profession. He was a camel driver, a gamal. And anyway, he was married to a minor, and she refused him, and he was not around. It makes sense he was not around, since it was a camel driver. Camel drivers go away for very long trips. Not as long as sailors, who go even longer, but very long trips. That's why you would hire a camel driver for a long trip. So she didn't want to wait till he got home. She wanted to refuse him, and she did. And it was an acceptable refusal. So what about that, Bet Shammai? Bet Shammai leBet Hillel, Pishon hagamal b'midah kefusha madad, lefichach madedu lo b'midah kefusha. Bet Shammai says, you're right, they did do that, but the rabbis allowed it in that case because he was a lowlife. He used a defective standard, meaning she brought in a field, nichse milog, into the marriage, and he is allowed to use it. That means they were married. And he was allowed to take from the fruit, but he did not take care of the field. He used a defective standard. He just abused the field and took all the fruit, didn't take care of it. It's because he acted in that way, in a less than standard way, so too we acted towards him in a less than standard way. So usually we would require that man to be there, but for him, we wanted to help her out and get away from this bad guy. And so we accepted her refusal even without him. Good. Now, midika achel pere peshita nesuahi. Now the Gemara has another question. It asks on its own to Bet Shammai. Since he was eating the fruit, that means they did not just have kiddushin, they must have nisuin, because that's when the right to eat fruit kicks in. Hold on, Bet Shammai says that after the minor is married, fully married to the man, then there is no more right of refusal. So how could she have refused in such a case? And the answer is abdu behe. In fact, they tied him in two knots. In other words, rabbis punished him in two ways that, according to Bet Shammai, usually we would not do that, but the rabbis saw that really she was undeserving of such a terrible guy, and they wanted to help her and get her out, so they relied on leniencies. But in a standard case, they would not have done that. All right, and now the next mahloket. Bet Shammai omrim bifnei bet din. Bet Shammai says that you have to a minor has to do the refusal in front of an official court. Bet Hillel did not require that. Tanan hatam, we have a Mishnah in Masechet Sanhedrin, the very first Mishnah, that lists all the numbers of judges you need for various things. Chalisa v'hame'onin bishlosha, to do chalitza, and to do refusal, which is our case, you need 3. Mantana, who is the author of the Mishnah in Masechet Sanhedrin? Amar Abba Bet Shammai, he must be Bet Shammai, because it says you need 3. 3 is a court, so you need a Bet Din. Abai Amar afilu tema Bet Hillel, ad kan la kamre Bet Hillel ela tela ba'inan mumchin, avan shelosha ba'inan. Abai says, no, I don't want the Mishnah to be only the opinion of Bet Shammai. Abai says it can even be the opinion of Bet Hillel. And Bet Hillel just says that, agrees that you need 3 judges. He doesn't think that you need expert judges, right? Ones with a special certificate that are known by everybody, that they have advanced experience and knowledge, just regular judges. And so that Mishnah It doesn't say you need mumchin, it just says 3. So when it says here that Bet Shammai says you need a bet din, it means that you need 3 expert judges, according to Abaye, whereas Bet Hillel would say, yes, you need 3 judges, but even if they're just run-of-the-mill judges. Kedatanya, Bet Shammai omerim bifnei bet din, Bet Hillel omerim bifnei bet din, veshelo bifnei bet din. Ve'elu modim shesarich shelo sha. We have Barita that spells all this out. Bet Shammai says you need in front of a bet din. So that means an official bet din with official judges. Bet Hillel says it could be in front of bet din, or maybe not, or even if not in front of bet din, as long as there are 3. So the point is the same, that when you have 3 people, that is a regular bet din. It does count as a bet din, even if there are just 3 run-of-the-mill judges. But it's not called an official bet din. It's just an ad hoc bet din. So when Bet Shammai says you need an official bet din, it means with experts. Rabbi Yosef bar Yehuda, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, machshirim b'shnayim. These 2 pairs of sages we've seen before, they say that all you need is 2 people. In other words, it's not really a judgment that you'd need 3, but rather 2 as witnesses to testify, yes, she did the refusal, we were there, we saw it. Amar Rav Yosef bar Yomi, Amar Rav Nachman, halacha keoto azug, and in fact the halacha is like that pair who says you only need a pair of witnesses. And finally, Bet Shammai omerim tema'en, that Bet Shammai says that a minor can only do mi'un 1 time. That's it. Right? We don't want a woman to be hefker, that they would, as a minor, marry one, refuse them, marry off to another one, refuse him again, refuse another person. No, he has only 1 chance. So rather, if she does mi'un, the language of the Mishnah was mema'enet umamtenet ad shetegdil v'tema'en v'tinaseh. She can do mi'un and then wait until she gets older, and then tema'en v'tinaseh, and then she should refuse again and then get married. So we're going to analyze this language of the Mishnah. Why would she have to refuse twice? She already refused once. When she was a minor, she'd just say refuse and then wait till she gets older, and then she can get married when she's an adult. So we have 2 explanations. Amar Shmuel, ad shetegdil v'tomar rasa'ani b'me'unim harishonim. Shmuel says, in fact, it refers to the, let's say she was 10. She refused. Then she should wait till she gets old and confirm that in fact she still wants to go through with that initial refusal. Just in case maybe she changed her mind again and she does want to be with him. She's still a minor. She's changing her mind. She's fickle. So let her confirm when she's an adult that it's a final refusal, and then she would get married. Okay, Ula Amar Tarte Katane. Ula says, no, it's not referring to doing mi'un again. According to Shemuel, she's actually, stating her refusal twice. She refused once and then stated it a second time. But Ula says, no, it's actually talking about 2 different possibilities for her. O shetema'en v'tegdil v'te'ades, o shetema'en v'tinaseh le'altar. When the Mishnah first says, mema'enet umamtenet, that means do mi'un once and then wait till get to become an adult, and then you'll go with erusin and kiddushin like a normal adult usually does, and then as an adult she won't be able to do me'un again even after the erusin. That's one option for her. Or a second option, tema'en v'tinaseh le'altar, if she still really wants to not wait and marry someone still as a minor, then fine, do mi'un for the first guy and get him out. And then for the second guy, do marriage directly. Don't do kiddushin and wait, and then maybe I like him, maybe I don't. Rather, do nisuin immediately, kiddushin and nisuin immediately with him. And then, according to Bet Shammai, once you do nisuin, you can't do mi'un anymore. You can't refuse it, and therefore she will not have to go through that process again, because she's not allowed to go through that process again. So that way she gets married immediately. So it's about 2 options for her. That's why it says the mi'un twice. Okay. Bishlama ula hainu deka'atane ad shetegdil v'tinaseh. So now we note that Ula's explanation fits better with the language of the Mishnah, because it says until she grows up and then she gets married. So that's her first option, grows up and gets married. But for Shemuel, who says that she only does mi'un once, and then she just confirms the mi'un again. So it shouldn't say that she grows up and gets married. It should be that she grows up and she states again, I still want to refuse that the guy. I know before, right as she becomes an adult, she will confirm the refusal, and then she's free to marry. Even if she doesn't marry right then, it doesn't matter. So it should have said, the main point is she says again that I want to refuse. So that's what it should have said. Kashya, so it's difficult to read the language of the Mishnah according to Shmuel. It's easy according to Ula, because there's two mi'uns, because two cases. Me'emet mamtenet, that's one. Or mamtenet ashedagdil, she refuses as a minor, and then she waits until she gets older, and then she'll get married. Or tema'en vetinaseh, or she refuses and gets married right away. And so that fits better with Ula, and that brings us to the next Mishnah, which we'll continue with tomorrow. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen.